Okay, in our next interview of Ask an Archer, we're very happy and honored to have Tshewang Nidup from Bhutan. Credit to K. Dryer who put us in contact together. Tshewang is a tour operator actually in Bhutan and an archer, and he's taken some time out to sit with me and talk about the interesting aspects of archery in Bhutan. So Tshewang, thank you very much for your time and sitting with me today.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to at least showcase our traditional Bhutanese archery.
No problem, no problem. Tshewang, Bhutan is probably one of the few countries in the world actually that archery is the national sport. Tell us a little bit about how that came about. Firstly, the origins of archery in Bhutan. Did it come from another country? Were there any external influences? And why archery is so important in Bhutan at the moment?
Thank you, Jihad. Archery. Now, when we talk about archery, we have to go to time immemorial, where it is believed, more or less like a myth, in the world of being. There are like 6 different realms, and human realm is one of them. But there are other 2 realms. I mean, humans, gods, and the demigods. We are on the upper realms. But there is a story of the gods and demigods having wars, because from the land of the demigods, the wish-fulfilling or wish-granting tree had grown, and it had its fruits and flowers in the realm of the gods. So the gods were having the fruits, and the demigods were jealous. So there was a dispute and there was a fight. So in the fight, it is believed that bows and arrows were used for the first time during the wars, during the war between gods and demigods. In fact, we believe the term war itself had originated because of the gods and demigods.
I see.
So the gods and demigods used it. Then we in the Himalayas, the Bhutanese, the southern eastern Himalayas, we were called as the Ridakpas. So Ridakpa meaning people living in the rocky cliffs. So mountainous or rugged terrain.
Yeah.
So here we used bows and arrows for hunting, kill animals, and before the agricultural revolution, people mainly lived on hunting animals, and they used bows and arrows. And thereafter, in the 15th century, one of the great saints, which is today world famous, the divine madman, or Drupa Khinle. So the Drupa Khinle was prophesied by the deities to go down to south. He came from Tibet, and he was prophesied to go down south to spread his teachings. So Drupa Khinle said, okay, in order to go down south, he has to send an arrow, or he has to shoot an arrow to see where his prophecy lies.
I see.
So he shot an arrow from Tibet, and it came flying all the way to Bhutan. It seems like legendary, but actually it is historical. So whatever it is, it's in the 15th century. So it came flying, it almost landed in the valley of Thimphu, but it kind of slid over one of the hilltops, and it went into the next valley of Punakha. So at Punakha, it went down into the valley floor and landed on the staircase of a family with a big roaring sound and a big trembling of the house. And the lady of the house, whose name was Tenzam Bhuti, she quickly came out to see what was happening. And then she saw this arrow on her staircase. Our staircases are wooden, so the arrow pierced it, and it was still vibrating.
Right.
And Tenzam Bhuti and her husband, Tshewang, similar to my name, they never had any children. And archery or bows and arrows are like implements of the men and the boys. So she took that incident as a very good omen. So she pulled out the arrow and took it to her altar room and believed in herself that maybe she's going to bear a son. So she kept it in her house. And a few days later, a man comes by and asks people about, did anybody see my arrow? And he came across Tenzam Bhuti and said, yes, I got it, because it was on my staircase. And the man was actually Drukpa Khinle, or the divine madman. So he said, that is a very good omen. We have some kind of interdependent connection. So I will be coming here at a time when it is appropriate. So on that day, he took the arrow with him and walked away. But he came again a few days later, and he stepped into the house and found the wife and the husband were just about to take their breakfast. And the woman immediately got up and welcomed him. And that's the Bhutanese way. You know, whenever you're going to eat, if some guests or some people, even a stranger pass by, you always invite them to join. So she invited him to join, and he came in and he said, this is not the time for your tea, but it is rather time for my tea. So she immediately went to the lady, grabbed her, and tried to make love to her, because that was the time to make love and to make her bear his child. But then the husband was so furious, and he quickly got up, went into his room, got a big sword out, and tried to cut him into pieces. So he tried to chop the divine madman, but the divine madman, with his one hand, he caught the sword and made a knot out of the sword. So that impressed the man, and the man submitted to Drukpa Khinle and asked for apologies, because he knew that by then Drukpa Khinle was a very profound and divine person. So having raised his hand towards him would naturally take him to hell. So he didn't want to do that. So he requested Drukpa Khinle to spare him and to forgive him for his action. So Drukpa Khinle said, there's no problem. So now you love the teaching, so you may take the teachings. But I, Drukpa Khinle, love your wife, so I shall take your wife. So he made love to this lady right in front of the husband. And then the lady later gave birth to a son whose grandson later in the 17th century became the second, not the second, the fourth secular ruler of Bhutan. And he was the one who also built the Tiger's Nest Temple, which is world famous today. So he was the first one to build Tiger's temple on the cliff face in the valley of Paro. So anyways, so that was the time when Drukpa Khmer used bows and arrows. And then later in the 17th, 18th century, when one of the secular rulers won some battle against his opponents, that was the time when they changed the arrow points. Today, our arrow points are like this. But prior to that, we had the normal V-shaped arrow points for hunting. So from that day on, we came to use these arrowheads and then started archery as part of celebration or as part of a game, or so to say. So then later, after 1907, that is after the monarchy took over the governance of Bhutan, we had our successive kings who were particularly very interested in archery. So anybody from the village, if you were good at shooting archery, they were immediately called to the royal court and asked to serve the king. But serving the king means playing with the king. So sometimes they play archery for consecutive weeks. And then some of the best archers were awarded with the gifts of bulls or gifts of fabrics for making our dress. So that way, it was kind of popularized. And thereafter, I mean, the effect also came to the villages, and people started playing archery. And today, every man talks about archery and talks about playing archery. And that's how archery became the national sport of Bhutan.
Well, that's a very fascinating story. That's one of the best introductions, I think, to one of the interviews that we've had. That's an amazing story there. The original kind of mythical story that you gave of the gods and the demigods, is this based in any religious belief that you have in Bhutan? And if, correct me if I'm wrong, is Buddhism the kind of national belief system or religion in Bhutan?
Yes, Buddhism, or rather the Mahayana or Vajrayana Buddhism is the state religion of Bhutan. But it doesn't mean that we all have to practice Buddhism.
Right.
State religion meaning we have the dual system of governance. We have secular on one side and monastic on the other side, which was introduced by Shabdrung, the founder of Bhutan, in the 17th century. So the monks, they follow the Vajrayana tradition. And Vajrayana tradition is a little different from those Theravada practitioners, especially in Southeast Asia, places like Burma, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. They follow Theravada, which is a direct teaching from the Buddha. Whereas ours is more or less like more modified by the successive teachers. So we practice Vajrayana Buddhism in Bhutan as a state religion, but at your own level. We ordinary people, we don't have much knowledge about Buddhism as such, but every one of us, we have our annual rituals that are being performed by the monks. So that way, we all believe that we are born Buddhist. And of course, among those, then there comes some devotees or some who are really into the practice, they become Buddhist.
Is there any religious significance or benefit in doing archery? For example, when we look at some other religions, Islam, for example, my religion, there is actually a reward for people who practice archery and who start archery, because we believe this is a way of following the Prophet Muhammad and the directions of God. Is there anything similar to this in your practice of Buddhism, or is it just a social activity based upon the the divine madman and that story, and so people are now practicing archery because of that?
In the religion or in the ritual practice, we do have the usage of bows and arrows. In fact, the very term, the arrow or da, literally means that something that you aim at something, aim at a point, and you get there. So that is da, that is the arrow. So in the 1800s, it is believed that one of our chieftains, when we had little wars with the British India, the person who shot the arrow maybe was in one of the temples, some few hundred kilometers away, but he had his reverence and faith in his arrow, and he shot an arrow towards his opponents. And it is believed that that arrow went flying down to the camps of the Britishers and hit the general and killed him there. And so that is also like, I mean, it's a historical, but it turns out to be like a myth also for an arrow to travel from such distance. But nevertheless, we also have a saying that the arrow of the accomplished being, or the wisdom, with a person with a wisdom mind, his arrow, you will not see him shooting, but you will see it hit the target. So it is like a meditation. You have your determination and meditation, and then you shoot, and it will hit. So that is how we use in the religious context. But other than that, it's mainly used as a weapon to fight in the earlier days. But nowadays, we celebrate by shooting on target.
Interesting. I must compliment your level of English. Your pronunciation, your English is very, very good. May I ask, where did you learn English?
Thank you very much. My English is not so good because we have learned it here in Bhutan itself. I got educated in Bhutan and nowhere else. But of course, I had the opportunity of practicing it because I work as a tour leader. So that helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you've been educated abroad. Your pronunciation, your English is very good. So I'd like to commend you on that. Why don't we move on to, you have some equipment there that you would like to show us. So take us through some of the equipment that you have, and then we'll talk about the actual competition aspect of archery in Bhutan. You know, how far do you shoot, and how the rules work?
Sure, Jihan. So first, before going into the rules and the archery shooting, I'll take you to the hardware of archery. I have the bow here. Maybe if you look, this part is interesting. The bow is like overlapping of two staves.
Yeah, two staves which is tied together, yeah?
Yeah, tied together by, this is tied by a silk thread, but you can also use the wires, maybe copper wire or aluminum wire. You can And then the string is made out of, what do you call, stinging nettle. So the bark of the stinging nettle, the fiber from the stinging nettles are used to make the string for the bow.
Okay, and
then,
it's twisted. Is it twisted to make it strong?
Yes, it's twisted.
I see.
It's first twisted into smaller bits, and then it's usually made into four threads, and again twisted anti-clockwise.
I see.
And that's how it gets twisted by itself. And then I have some kind of green leaf here. This is leaves of Artemisia, a particular plant that grows in the wild. So once you have strung your bow, you have to kind of rub it with this green leaf so that it's moistened.
I see.
So every now and then, so that some kind of moisture is there, which helps the string to stay strong, because overusing and then the dryness will make it snap.
I see. So very much like the beeswax. In the West, we use beeswax to wax the string, but there you use the leaf.
Yes. We couldn't use the wax because you needed to keep it, and also it's not easily available. So because normally you are playing out in the field. So you just grab any leaf and just start to rub it occasionally.
Right.
So that's the bow and the arrows.
Tell me, sorry, Tshewang, the wood that is used for the bow, is it local wood? Is it bamboo? Or what type of wood do they use?
I'm sorry, that's a special kind of bamboo that is normally grown at low altitude. And that bamboo also, there's a special bamboo, and that bamboo species, the one bending towards east, and if you can get the staff from that particular section that is bending towards east, that's supposed to be a better bow. And then when you string them, again, for instance, this side is the outer skin of the bamboo, and this side is inner. So when you string the bow, the outer has to be inside, and the inner has to be exposed out. If you are stringing it opposite, then the bow can easily break.
I see. I see. Do you have people who are specialist bow makers in Bhutan?
Well, there is no, I mean, there are some people who are bow makers and they sell bows. But otherwise, I mean, we as growing teenagers, we made our own bows ourselves. I mean, and that also, if tomorrow is the archery, you make your bow today.
Yes, right.
So, I mean, we don't really do much of preparation.
Interesting. Okay, excellent. Your arrows.
So that's one kind of bamboo that is grown in the tropical area. And the bamboo for the arrows are grown at higher elevation, comparatively higher compared to the bow bamboo, which is kind of thicker and wider. And these are little like reed-like bamboos.
I see.
And there are various varieties. And of these, the one, the knot, there is a, here, some of these knots go deeper inside, which are not so good arrows. So if the knot is coming out, it is a better bamboo. And it's easier to straighten it. And these are the arrow heads or arrow points. And then
the arrowheads are metal.
Metal, yes. It's basically more or less like a tin.
Right. Yes. Okay. And the feathers, yeah.
So now these are fletchers. We have 4 fletchers. And these fletchers also, there are 2 kinds mainly. Of course, first they come from a bird that is called the Himalayan monal. It's a beautiful bird, big bird that lives in elevations above 3,500 meters. So some people hunt them. Otherwise, I mean, if you are a cow herder, you can also collect them because they drop their feathers every now and then. So you can pick it up also. But today, because of these environmental concerns, we had banned use of bird feathers on arrows. So now today they are using plastic fletchers.
Oh, really?
And
okay.
among the feathers also, some feathers, if you look, especially the feather from the wing, one side is lower than the other side. So you use the lower side. So this is the natural one. It's the lower side of the feather. And that is supposed to be best. And then otherwise, you also use the other side, the broader one, which can be trimmed down by using a hot iron bar. And you make it to that level. But the natural one is supposed to be more effective in the flight.
Interesting. Interesting.
And then we have these little things.
Okay. Leather finger tabs. Okay.
Leather finger tabs.
Yeah.
So that your skin is protected when you pull that thin string. Myself as a kid, I remember without using these and blisters every now and then. And then we also have these. This is raw silk. And so what we do is so when I shoot, this string always touches your kind of arm or the wrist. So this one kind of protects. As you release, it's supposed to be your arm protector or arm guard. And this is a beautiful bamboo woven quiver. And I could have several arrows in there.
Beautiful. Going back to the bow. These are the 2 pieces, and there's a hole in between, and so when you're traveling, you can also take it like this. Yes, ingenious, very good. I see. Right, so easy to travel with, yes.
And then you tie on either side, this side, and it becomes your bow.
Have you ever had a situation where that part of the bow, it will break or snap, or is it generally quite strong?
It's generally strong, but sometimes some kind of bugs also get in there and then makes a kind of a dent, sort of. It bores a hole and then it breaks. And sometimes repeated shooting, and then also when it really gets dry, it breaks, but it doesn't break like any brittle, what do you call, bow. I mean, it just cracks, and then we have to replace it. So that's about it. And
you said you had a target. You had a target there, no?
Yes, yes.
Very nice. Okay, please explain the scoring and how it works and the colors and things.
So now, with the target also, we have, now this is, you have a string of flowers here that is indicated that it is for ordinary use. So layperson's target is this one. Suppose if you're playing with the royal, the king, you know, then instead of this, we have a half moon or the crescent. And in the middle, there is a sun disk. So sun and the moon disk. So that means that some royals are playing. So when the royals are not there, we are not allowed to use the sun and the moon. So this is just a flower. And this is the eyes, or the bullseye, you call. The bullseye is right in the middle. If your arrow hits here, it's 3 points. Hitting anywhere above this line. Now, this line is supposed to be above the ground. Anything below here is in the ground. So if your arrow hits the ground and then pierces it through and hits the target, when you pull out the target and the arrow remains on the target, you get 1 point.
I see.
And otherwise, anywhere else on the board is 2 points. So 3 points, anyway, 2 and 1 point. And then our archery game is also very controversial. If you do not agree on the rules and regulations of the game before shooting, that is a disaster, because then we haven't talked about it and so on and so forth. These kind of issues are raised, and you can never settle, because it's even 1 point is very important.
Of course, of course, of course.
Yeah. So therefore, before the shooting, we normally nominate 2 people, the 2 players from each team, and we decide on the rules and regulations. Actually, I mean, in today's terms, you can